Now, one of the biggest challenges these days is getting AI gear. It is one of the hardest practical challenges right now. How are customers dealing with GPU and RAM scarcity?
Yeah, this is something that's affecting the industry as a whole because the cost of RAM and storage, in addition to the cost of GPUs and CPUs, is going up. To the extent where what we're seeing people try to do is lock in server purchases as soon as possible so they can lock in prices and get shipments on RAM, even today. And so this is one of those places where you need to realize you are not going to be able to have a preferred vendor. That if you're used to buying from one vendor, you are not, they might not be able to supply you, or their costs might get prohibitive for you to continue to stay on that platform of choice. What we see customers doing is they are being heterogeneous in design upfront. So they're recognizing they're either going to have to switch vendors and be able to intermix different vendors depending on their supply chain. They're going to have to compromise on how they configure the systems and then have heterogeneous environments, even if they're sticking with one vendor, or they are sourcing RAM themselves or potentially planning to add RAM later, assuming, let's hope, it frees up in the market. And they are planning to keep systems in service for longer, which means patching and updating and revising them, or looking into the secondary market for these servers. As the frontier CPUs and GPUs come off market, they're very usable for inference, and they'll be available for you from these training labs. So you need to be looking very differently at the hardware infrastructure that you might have said, oh, I'm a Dell shop or a Cisco shop or an HP shop, and been, thinking that would save you. The reality today is that you're going to get what you get. It even might be ARM servers with, based on NVIDIA chips to do this work. And you need to be prepared for a higher degree of flexibility in what type of gear that you're onboarding. And if you're thinking, that's scary, I just want to never own hardware again, the challenge of this market is that renting your hardware or getting it from a service provider, you're going to be paying that markup multiple times over. And so while it might be scary to pay more for hardware, owning the hardware and controlling the cost of that hardware is absolutely essential, because all of these costs are being passed on with multipliers from the service providers. And that is a very, very serious concern if you're trying to manage your budget. It's going to show up in your inferencing costs. It's going to show up in your cloud and other component costs. It's going to show up in basically any way you turn trying to avoid having hardware. The hardware costs are still going to get passed down to you.